Coming to the second issue that's huge this week, is about corporates owning banks. And to someone like me, that has like huge repercussions on economic stability, on people's welfare. We already see banks failing and people, flailing around to save their money, and to actually get it out of the bank way in which they had trust. So quickly, Avinash, what would you say about this news? Like, what's your first reaction?
Well, this is another nail in the coffin of our banking system in India. Banks were supposed to be institutions that people trust, that they would put their money knowing that that amount of that their hard-earned money. And when I talk about hard-earned, I'm talking about the poorest of the poor who really toil for every rupee. And they were forced to put that money, the cash, into the banks in 2016, wait in a line, and a few people died. But nonetheless, they did trust the bank. And over time, the bank started putting charges, one charges after the other. Now they have put in charges that you cannot deposit or withdraw more than 3 times. And, the trust that people had in the bank has eroded. Of course, a lot of banks also have collapsed, and because there was a lot of nexus again between the government, the banks, and the private corporates, where loans were given to these corporates, and they either ran away with the money and defaulted on the loans. So this nexus has been going on. And instead of fixing the system, and the system can be fixed, but instead of fixing the system, the government thinks that privatization or allowing more private players to enter will solve the problem. It won't. We already seen Global Trust Bank fail. We already seen Yes Bank fail, and now the government is thinking of allowing Adani and Reliance to enter the banking system. And when I say banking, it means taking your savings and using it and giving it out as loans. Now, who are these people? They are the people who have one of the biggest. They carry one of the biggest loans, most riskiest loans, and they're finding it tough to get loans from banks nowadays. So now they want to set up their own bank so they can take your money. They can bribe the government and sabotage the nationalized bank, so that they give you poor service, and in turn you will run to these private banks and put your money and expose your hard-earned money to their projects, the risky projects that they take up. So it's a very sad situation. In no way these companies can or should be allowed to operate banks. We see HSBC and these big names. Every couple of years, big scams come out, and then they blame some officer or some staff, and it gets hushed up. Banks were the reason why, the private banks were the reason why the American economy collapsed in 2008, is because they just gave loans, and they gave loans without checking. There was no proper regulation. And in a country like ours, where anyways is no good regulation, the RBI has not even counted the demonetized notes. So they always wake up after banks fail. In such a situation, whatever little trust that we have in existing banks, that we have to use in order to fix the system, rather than, encourage these private players with very bad track record, very anti-people agendas to set up banks and take control of India's economy.
Okay. I would also like to add here, Avinash, the very basis of our constitution is socialism, and it's about the welfare of the people. So when you talk about, yes, businesses exist, private entities exist, and they have all the rights to exist. There's no wrong in that. But there are certain sectors, as you mentioned, where people, the poorest of the poor, who work very hard for every single penny, when they put that money, first you force them to put that money in the banks, and then you see one bank failing after the other, and then now you're going to be charged. Like, I find it extremely preposterous that the money that you earn, you have to spend money on even taking out the money, or even spend money on going and depositing money, which I find is extremely unfair. So,
Yeah.
when we talk about socialism, we talk about the welfare of the people, which is a very basic, simple structure of our country on what we started. It, it seems it seems like this country, the very ethos of it is changing. I feel, because private players, somebody like Nirav Modi, overnight takes such a huge loan and then just disappears abroad. What is the guarantee that all these private players coming into banking, that they are not going to just simply run away with our hard-earned money and leave us in the lurch? So this is something that these are some of the questions that I'm left with, a lot of people are left with when we hear of such news.
So this classic example of Adani right now, that they are not getting loans for Adani not getting loan for its coal project in Australia from some of the biggest banks, the Citibank and they they had to pressurize the Indian government to force SBI to give them $1 billion loan. Now SBI had to write off nearly 70,000 odd non-performing assets, the loan that had been given out previously. So they had to write it off the book because it was making their balance sheet look bad. And now they are being forced to give this $1 billion loan to Adani that was rejected before. That there's a lot of opposition for this project in other states. The rating agencies have rated SBI. They have a very negative outlook on their future, and in spite of all this, in spite of SBI facing a probable loan default crisis, especially in the housing, because they give a lot of housing loans, and with the COVID, a lot of people have lost their job. So there will be a lot of foreclosures happening where they will take possession of flats, and the flat prices will drop, and they will not be able to recover the amount that they had given as loans. So in the face of all this, Adani comes along and they are asking, and SBI is giving them $1 billion. Now, if at all SBI wants to give, it has $1 billion. Let's say they have $1 billion to give as loan. Why aren't they giving it to industries to set up within India to create jobs? That's my question. If it is foreign direct investment, it's supposed to be Adani's own money, not our money that is there in SBI. If it's a profitable enterprise, anyone would be more than happy to invest in this Adani's project, especially foreign banks who give at a very low interest as well, and especially Australia. Now, when a country gives a loan to another country it's normally on a contract that there will be some technology export. Like for example, Japan gives a loan to India with the assurance that the high-speed railway technology will be only of Japanese technology. What sort of export are we doing to Australia to benefit this? Are we getting subsidized coal from them? No, we are going to get it at market rate decided by Adani. Are we getting any? Are our people getting jobs? No, it's the Australian people and who will be reaping the benefits. So what is India getting exactly out of this deal? And they're not. So if at all they have $1 billion, invest in small businesses, in medium scale businesses and industries, and also invest in microfinance, because the small businessman today needs microfinance as rolling cash. So that is where they have to invest. But SBI doesn't want to do that. It's unfortunate.
Yeah, it's rather unfortunate. It seems that the priorities of the current disposition are highly misplaced, and the people who are supposed to benefit, ultimately they are not getting any of the benefits, but the rich keep getting richer and the poor keep getting poorer, and that's really, really sad.